everyone. Thanks for joining us here on the DeProgram show. I'm Ted Rall. That over there is John Kiriakou. Michelle Whitty can't make it today, but she'll be back on the next one, I guess early next week, I hope, or middle of next week. Well, that is to be determined. Hopefully we'll have a more regular schedule at some point.
Yeah.
So I guess, so John, you're still over in the icy land?
Man, I'm still in Iceland, and it is as cold. If you haven't been here, it is as cold and horrible as you might imagine. I mean, the people are lovely. The food is interesting. But man, it's cold all the time. I went out to a bar last night, Ted, and I asked the bartender. I thought he was Icelandic. It turns out he's Polish, but he's been here for 20-something years. And I said, I read that the all-time highest recorded temperature in Iceland is 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Wow. Yeah. And he said, yeah, that's probably right. I said, how warm does summer get? He goes, in Fahrenheit, 60, 64. And I was like, dude, I just can't do it. I can't do it. And it's always cloudy, always.
That might be the worst part, you know. Yeah. Before I spent some time there, I used to always read about how people would get so depressed in Portland. It's like, it's raining all the time. It's always, and I was like, well, I don't care about that. I grew up, you know, in a town that was so famous for being overcast that they used to film horror movies there because they needed that overcast vibe. Mm-hmm. But you know, like David Cronenberg, people like that. But anyway, I go to Portland. I'm like, oh, I see it. Right? It's like, because it's the relentlessness. It's every day, and it's not even like a good rain. It's like just it's constant frizzle all the time. Yeah, or at least it was. I think the weather's starting to change there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how it is here. It's not good.
No,
not good. I don't enjoy it.
Well, you're. It's not much longer for you. So speaking of things that are not good.
Yeah.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average continued its steady slide today.
And I'm looking at it right now, Ted. The Dow is down 1,848 points. The NASDAQ is down 790. That puts it into bear market territory. And the S&P is down 270 points. Absolutely stunning.
So in a 2-day loss, Liberation Day has liberated billions of dollars, maybe trillions of dollars of market capitalization from people's 401ks.
Absolutely right.
So that's been the effect of this. And so it's 6.5 or more. I guess it's pushing 7% of overall market share. This is basically, I was working on Wall Street in October of 1987. And this is about what that was, except that happened in one day. But who cares? What's the difference? It's the effect that matters.
I purposely went to Fox News this afternoon just to see. I wanted to compare their coverage of this with the other outlets. There's no coverage. Wow. Not only was there not a single article about the State Department or the tariffs, other than one little article at the bottom that said, well, Nancy Pelosi was for tariffs 4 years ago, but they've also disabled their ticker.
Wow.
The ticker just doesn't exist on the website anymore.
Wow.
And it was there a couple of days ago.
I mean, you and I have talked about this before with Michelle. You know, it's like media spin is usually not lies like, Trump is an agent of Putin. It's usually like just what they don't cover, right? It's it's about just omission. Yeah. This is a classic example.
It is. It's incredible.
So Donald Trump he's been putting a brave face on all this. He says, you know, my policies will never change. I mean, I think we've already seen that's not true. His policies have certainly changed many times. You know, you never know. So, I mean, this is so basically, I mean, is there a chance this could work? I guess we talked about this a little bit yesterday.
Yeah. Well, you know, the goal is to force all these countries to the negotiating table and then to negotiate deals that are more beneficial to the US. You look at, for example, our trade deficit with China. In 1990, we had no trade deficit with China. It was even. And then it's just been a cliff ever since then. So if he can force the Chinese to renegotiate a deal, and the European Union and, everybody else apparently around the world with whom we have trade relations, sure, that could be a victory. But do you really see that happening? I think we have made so many countries so angry that they're going to soon calculate that if they just stick together against the United States, they can make us capitulate. And I think that's what their strategy is going to be.
I mean, I guess the question is what is the organ that makes that happen, right? I mean, the EU seems like an obvious start.
Definitely. And don't forget BRICS too. We've got to be worried about BRICS now.
And that seems like it was going to be more like it seemed like Trump's short-term attempt to rapprochement with Russia, which I guess isn't really dead, but it seems to be backburnered right now with all the tariff stuff. That seemed to be neutralizing or mitigating the BRICS threat. I don't know if that's the right word, challenge, but that seems to be now if you're the leaders of BRICS, if you're the Russians, if you're the Chinese, you're the Indians, you've got to be thinking. The phones are buzzing, right? They're talking. They've got to be like, what the hell is going on in Washington?
Trump threatened again today to fire the Fed chairman. I'm not sleeping. I'm not sleeping in Iceland, and I can't remember anything. Anyway, threatened to
Jerome Powell.
Thank you, Jerome Powell. He threatened to fire Jerome Powell if Powell doesn't immediately begin cutting interest rates, because Trump can be unhinged, but he's not necessarily stupid. He went to, Wharton School of Business after all, and he knows.
Well, undergrad.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
He always says he went to. So he doesn't have an MBA. He went to. So he spent 2 years. He spent 2 years at Fordham, transferred to UPenn. Not a bad school by any means.
No, it's an Ivy League.
But they majored in business, and so technically, that's the Wharton School of Business. But when people say they've gone to Wharton, you think that MBA from Wharton,
right? And
he lets everybody think that. But anyway,
he's
still not stupid. I'll give you that.
He knows that these tariffs are going to lead very quickly to inflation, and so he's trying to get Jerome Powell to cut interest rates so that it can offset inflation to a certain extent. And Powell just ignored him.
Well, it's his job to ignore him, right? I mean, the Fed is supposed to be independent.
That's right.
You could argue that it ought not to be, but it is, and that's our system. I mean, I can argue there's pros and cons either way. I mean, I'm not really sure fiscal and monetary policy should really be in the hands of the president of the United States. I mean, honestly, like, what did Joe Biden know about fiscal policy?
Right. Nothing.
So.
Nothing.
I mean, it's interesting. Bill Clinton, his autobiography, which was not very good, but nevertheless, there's little nuggets in all of these kinds of books. He talked at length about how when he became president, he was shocked at the fact that, as he put it, I realized I'm not the president of the United States. I was the president of the bond market. I spent all of my time taking briefings and thinking about things that being worried about the state of treasury bonds and notes and interest rates on those, and fiscal policy vis-a-vis America's massive, now even much bigger debt load. I mean, that's a factor too. I mean, I'm wondering, is this like a bad, bonds tend to track, bonds are a refuge in a time when equities are in trouble. Could this be like a sort of a three-dimensional chess move to prop up the bond market as you tank the stocks?
I suppose it could, but I mean, you have to assume that that everything Donald Trump does is for the benefit of Donald Trump.
Right.
And I don't know, would it not affect his wealth? Maybe it wouldn't, because he's all in real estate. But
And if interest rates go down, that's good for him.
Good for real estate. Did you happen to see this article in the Times today about Newsmax and Christopher Ruddy?
No, I missed it.
Newsmax has been around since 2014. They're a minor competitor with Fox News. They're a little further to the right than Fox is. But they went public day before yesterday. And I know, right? You know where I'm going.
IPO day. Oh my God.
So IPO day before yesterday, $10 a share. It closed the day at $250 a share.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, then the market crashed yesterday and again today. Yesterday it fell to 77.
Okay.
Which is still pretty doggone high. And Ruddy made this funny comment. I'm gonna look up the price now. Ruddy made this funny comment like, "Wow, it was a really bad day, but at least I'm still a billionaire." And I was wondering today. Let's see, Newsmax stock.
That's amazing. He lost. So he was super rich.
It's down 29% today.
Wow.
To $43.
Yeah, I mean, still, if you'd gone, it's so right. Psychology is so interesting, right? If it had just climbed from 10 to 43, everyone would have said,
"Oh my God, he's a genius! It's a buy."
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's down from 250 to 43 in 2 days.
That's insane. I mean, so this volatility. I've been thinking a lot about what you said about how, Putin was like, he's like, I agree with Trump's policies. I like him, but he's so unpredictable. And that really bothers me. And, I think if I were a national leader of any stripe, I would worry about that. I mean, I'd want predictability would be super important to me. And, for Trump, it seems to be a feature, not a bug, that he's completely, it's kind of like the nature, I think, of a semi-autocratic governing style, right? I mean, it's like, we think about like Turkmenbashi in Turkmenistan.
Right.
Everybody's nobody knew what he was up to. He was insane. And he was like, he had crazy ideas of putting like a giant lake in the middle of in a desert in the world's hottest nation. And he would ban music and then unban music. And, sometimes he'd grow his beards were banned, but when he grew out a beard, then everyone grew a beard to match him. And this, the result is if you have an autocratic style, right, everybody's just watching you.
Yes.
Right. Because it's like, people are, it reminds me of like my grandfather was in a camp in World War II, and they had the sadistic guard that they had to deal with, and they all hated him. He got transferred to the Eastern Front, but they were so upset, he and the other inmates, because they were like, we know Hans, like we know when he's in a good mood, we know when to avoid him. Who knows what's going to come next? With Donald Trump, everybody's studying him because there's no legislative branch at all. Everything is just executive orders. You never know what's coming down the pike. Everything, there's no internal consistency ideologically, right? It's not a traditional liberal or conservative. It's a hodgepodge of weirdness, stuff that he promised, stuff he didn't promise, that stuff that's completely unexpected. This is like twisting our guts up, right? Kind of like as a country. He's kind of driving us all crazy. Yeah.
It's the unpredictability that bothers me so much. Like every day, before I even get out of bed, I reach over, I grab my phone, and I look at the news. Like, what craziness do I have to think about today?
What now?
Yeah.
And by the way, right before we came on, I don't know if you caught this, but we had talked a little bit about this. A federal judge has ordered that one guy who was accidentally deported to the Salvador private prison to be returned to the United States by Monday. The administration admits that it was a mistake, but I don't understand why they don't just call the Salvadorians and say, send him back. But they claim that they can't get him back because he's no longer under their jurisdiction, that he's in a foreign. Oh, well, we sent him there. It's like, not like we know anyone in El Salvador. They're paying $6 million a year to house these people. Right? Why do you think they're making that argument? Do you think it's like setting a bar for other cases?
Yeah, I do. And I also think it's part of a bigger program, a bigger policy whereby the executive would be and will always be the first among equals. We say we have 3 equal branches of government. No, we don't.
Mm-hmm.
No, we don't. Congress just concedes its authority to the White House. And I think that the White House wants to force the courts to concede their authority.
And that's been, I mean, the thing is, I've been thinking a lot about how so much of the press is, they failed so many ways, but they really failed to see the antecedents here. I mean, as you well know, the Bush administration they rolled back. They posited the theory of the unitary executive first. This goes back for a long time. With the
signing declarations, remember those?
Right, the signing statements, and Obama continued to expand those, and you could really go back all the way to, I mean, really, the power to declare war and is in the Constitution explicitly reserved to Congress, except in the rarest of exceptions. But really, going back to Thomas Jefferson, Congress has abdicated their responsibilities there. And I mean, I guess the whole point is we're acting as if this is all new, but we saw this coming forever, right? I mean,
yes, indeed.
It was all basically like, I mean, up until now, we've basically just counted on, like, if even an asshole like Richard Nixon still respected the system enough in the end to yield to, for example, cough up the White House tapes, then ultimately to step down. But in the back of everyone's mind is like, well, what if the person's an asshole who doesn't respect the system? Then what? And that's what we have now.
Yeah. I was interested today too, to see coverage of Republican senators and senior Republican House members' opinions on tariffs over the previous 8 or 10 years. They were strongly, stridently opposed to tariffs.
Of course.
And today, it's just silence from Capitol Hill. Just silence. But with that said, the Democrats have been silent too. We complained yesterday on the show that the Democrats just don't have a policy, right? They don't stand for anything. So here we are, at least 2 days into a crisis situation. We're in an economic crisis right now.
We are.
And there's just silence.
I don't understand Democrats here. I mean, this is a place where Democrats have actually taken some heat over the years. Arguably, they lost this election and the 2016 election over their stance in favor of free trade.
Yeah.
It seems to me like you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. Now would be a good time for them to say, we have always been for free trade since NAFTA, since 1994. And this is exactly what we were talking about. And we were right. Why not take the victory dance?
Not a word. The only news I saw today about Democrats was that 15 Democrats in the Senate voted against aid to Israel, which kind of was dramatic, but
that is.
But aid to Israel still got 83 votes, 84 votes, something like that.
Of course. It's like, oh my God. So we should talk about China's retaliatory tariffs. So this is like, it is kind of like the Middle East, right? Everybody's always like, nobody's like, I'm starting it. Everyone's like, I'm retaliating against that thing you did before. So, Israel's like, history begins on October 7th. Hamas is like, no, this goes back. Everybody's like, this is just like how it is for the tariffs. Trump is like, well, I'm retaliating. China's had a protectionist market, which they have.
Yes.
That's no question about that. So he imposes 34% tariff against China. So President Xi's like, oh, you like 34%? We'll do 34%. We'll call your 34 and raise you 34. I would think that at a certain point, someone from the Department of the Treasury is on the phone with their Beijing counterpart in, at the Ministry of Finance or whatever it is over there. Right. I would think. But I mean, this is obviously, China's a massive provider of goods into the United States. I mean, this is not sustainable. We can't have a trade war with China.
That's right. I saw, here it is, Xinhua. The Chinese, when you say, I had to laugh when you said, they said, we'll see your 34%, we'll raise you 34%. They also added 11 U.S. companies to something called an unreliable entity list. So this is U.S. companies that are not permitted to do business with China, and I can't find any of them. I've seen references to a couple: High Point Aero Technologies, Universal Logistics Holdings, Source Intelligence, MOFCOM. I don't know what the heck that is.
MOFCOM.
Skydio. I don't know what these companies are, but they're no longer permitted to do business in China.
So maybe it's completely symbolic, right? It's obviously not Apple.
Right.
Yeah. It's not Tesla.
No.
Yeah.
Although, let's talk about that for a second. There's a Chinese electric car company called Beyond Your Dreams. When I was in Hong Kong last year, I saw one. I was like, what the heck kind of car is that? It's beautiful. And it has this weird logo, BYD, but it's really stylized. And this Hong Kong attorney that I was with said, oh, that's Beyond Your Dreams. I said, what the heck is that?
What a name.
It's the biggest electric car company in the world.
What?
Yeah. But as soon as we got word that the Chinese were developing this electric car and it was going to be a very cheap competitor to Tesla, we said, nope, banned in the United States.
Did you make up some bullshit safety thing?
Oh, I'm sure that we did.
Yeah.
I'm sure that we did. But you can buy this thing for, 28 grand, 30 grand. So as a result, practically everybody in Australia drives one of these things.
Wow.
And everybody in China who has a couple of bucks drives it. And they're available all over Asia. I saw one, where was I in Europe recently? I was somewhere in Europe and I saw one. But they're banned in the United States. Only because they're cheaper than Teslas and do exactly the same thing.
Wow. That's, yeah. Well, we definitely have some, Americans don't think we ban things, but we do. We even ban movies. There's a amazing movie by Roman Polanski, who's kind of been canceled because of Me Too, the Me Too movement. But it's called An Officer and a Spy. It's about the Dreyfus Affair. Just came out maybe 2 years ago, and it's banned in the United States. You can't buy the DVD.
What?
You can't. It's banned. Yeah, you can't. But however, my son, who's almost 21, and therefore he basically little hacker, he can like figure out how to get around things. So we streamed an illicit version of this film. It's gorgeous. It's by the same. It's basically the same same kind of vibe as The Pianist in terms of that level of filmmaking. Stunning. And it's just like, I can't believe Americans aren't, at a time when we're talking about anti-Semitism, it's a really amazing thing to watch. But yeah, anyway, things are banned. I can't believe that car is banned. Don't the Chinese also have a regular gas car that's amazing and it's like $8 grand or something? But
I wouldn't be
also
surprised.
banned.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Yeah. The US banned absinthe for years and years and years. Just a couple of years ago. I'll tell you what, I was in an Eastern European country. This is 25 years ago. Eastern European country, and I'm with a CIA colleague, and we're going to meet a source, kind of a highly placed source. Mm-hmm. So we're doing a foot surveillance detection route, which means instead of driving from point A to point B and then C and then D and then the meeting site, we're walking it. Mm-hmm. And we walk past this bar, and I see an advertisement for absinthe. And I said, oh, let's go in here. We got to use this as a cover stop. I've never had absinthe before because it's banned. So I went in, and I said to the bartender, I want a shot of absinthe. And he said, well, you have to chase it with a glass of Sprite. It's very strong. He said, you have to.
It tastes terrible.
Yeah, it's terrible. And you take
absinthe sucks. I tried it twice. I was like, ugh.
Well, I only had one shot, and it wiped my brain clear. And so we did the rest of the surveillance detection route. We go to the meeting. We're meeting with the agent. And finally, he turns to my colleague and he says, what's wrong with him? And I said, I'm sorry, man, I'm fucked up. I had absinthe. No wonder it's banned in the United States.
Yeah, this is like they were right. I just wonder, like, I mean, you know, I know there's like all those French poets, right? Like Baudelaire, right? They fried
They went crazy.
They rotted their brains.
He drank himself insane with absinthe. Just as a ridiculous, unnecessarily trivial aside, Oprah Winfrey has the world's largest collection of 19th century absinthe spoons.
How esoteric.
I
love people who have strange collections, like Steve McQueen, you know, the actor, not the current film director, but the good actor. He was insanely wealthy. He made all of his money from one movie, The Blob. So when all these other films he made like nothing from, but he made 50. So he didn't want to do The Blob. He was an up and coming young actor, 1955. So so they said, okay, we'll give you a % of the gross. That never happens in Hollywood, right? Because of creative accounting, like, oh, you know, like Sean Connery was told repeatedly that the James Bond films never made any money, right? Yeah. So it's like, well, you know, it's like, so why do you keep making them? Well, we keep hoping that we'll make money in the future.
Ridiculous lies.
So anyway, the point is, so he took the gross, and The Blob made in 1955 dollars. He got 10% of this. He made $50 million. He got $5 million, $1955. So he was rich, and he loved to collect weird shit. He collected cars like all rich people do, but he also collected like knives from all over the world. So he was created one of the biggest collections of folding and non-folding, historical, foreign. Like, I don't know what happened to all the knives. It kind of drove his kids crazy because he didn't have much money to leave them behind because he spent all of his money on fucking knives.
Well, that's so strange. Yeah, people have these absinthe spoons. They're silver and they're slotted because you're supposed to put a cube of sugar on them.
Oh, right.
You rest it just into the absinthe until the sugar dissolves. Then you stir, and then you do the shot.
I wonder if Oprah drinks absinthe. I bet she doesn't. She's too lucid.
Yeah. Well, like Madonna. Madonna has the world's largest collection of Tiffany lamps. It's just, and she has the world's largest collection in private hands of Frida Kahlo paintings.
Oh, well, that's got to be worth some money.
Yeah. Yeah. Museums borrow her Frida Kahlos. Wow. They travel. Yeah.
That's like Steve Martin has one of the world's biggest Picasso collections.
He's also on the board of the LACMA, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, because of his collection. He's got the eye, and he started buying stuff like when artists were nobodies.
Yeah, and I guess he doesn't have a cocaine habit, so
right.
So he saved money. So
it's like Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper bought the very first Andy Warhol soup can.
Wow.
Yeah, he and Warhol were friends in the early 60s. He lost it in a divorce. Oh, shit. But he had that early eye too. Yeah. Yeah.
Poor Dennis Hopper. Well, so since we're getting onto the subject of insanity, let's talk about Laura Loomer.
Michelle mentioned this yesterday.
Laura Loomer had she's like Santa Claus. She had a list and she checked it twice, and she gave it to Donald Trump, and it was primarily directed at all the people in the security apparatus at the NSC and elsewhere who participated in the signal leak. I guess it's fair to say, to the guy from the Atlantic, and like now we know that Michael Waltz also used private Gmail. And now we also know, and I guess this isn't surprising, that this wasn't a one-off signal thing, that this is a regular thing that he and others use constantly. There's at least 20 to 25 more discrete groups of sensitive information being discussed on Signal.
It's a felony for multiple reasons. First of all, it's clearly and obviously a violation of the Espionage Act. But it's also a violation of the Federal Records Preservation Act.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, people don't realize that classified material is supposed to be preserved, still classified at the National Archives.
That's right. Because someday it's going to be subject to mandatory declassification, and it should be available to scholars or PhD candidates or researchers or curious Americans.
So Laura Loomer is this strange conservative influencer.
Yeah, she's a nut.
Who believes that 9/11 may not have happened. I'm not really sure what her particular take on this is. I had a friend who I'm no longer friends with, who he was, he believed in all that, like in plain sight and all that crap. He had me watch it, and I was like, but there's no here, there's no there. And I'm like, it's always like, well, he's like, well, anyway, I don't want to go down that stupid rabbit hole. I get so much shit from these truther people all the time.
I do
because
too.
They're like, if you're, you're questioning the narrative. So and I'm like, yeah, I question narratives when I don't believe it. But I mean, I live in New York. I know what happened that day. But anyway, so Laura Loomer basically has claimed the scalp of the head of the NSA
and the deputy. Yeah, we're talking about a 3-star general and his civilian senior intelligence service counterpart, or deputy, I should say, both summarily thrown out of the building today and replaced by the director of the Pentagon Cyber Command. Let's talk about Laura Loomer for just another minute. This is a woman who is so xenophobic, Islamophobic, homophobic. She's been banned for life from Uber, from Lyft, and from Target.
From Target?
Yeah.
Not from Target.
She'll just go in and start screaming because people are Muslim and they're terrorists, and it's just she's not a sane person. There's a Republican campaign consultant with whom I very foolishly worked for a while, Karen Giorno. She had run the Trump campaign in Florida in 2016. Karen Giorno ran the Laura Loomer for Congress campaign in 2018. And I said to her, "You're working with Laura Loomer? Are you out of your mind?" And she said, "Oh, she's not as bad as people say. That's just the liberal media, blah, 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 blah." God. Yeah, and then Laura Loomer got like 23% because she is as bad as people think, truly.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
all of a sudden,
the president's ear.
You took the words right out of my mouth. All of a sudden, she has the president's ear again. There were rumors years ago that she had been banned from Mar-a-Lago because she's a nut. And now here she is walking into the Oval Office and firing the director of NSA, the deputy director of NSA, and 4 senior directors at the National Security Council. And did you see why? She said it's because they weren't sufficiently loyal to President Trump. What that meant was at NSA, they had been appointed by General Milley, who Trump fired. And at NSC, they had been appointed by Joe Biden. But the thing is, members of the National Security Council are apolitical. They have nothing to do with individual presidents. And they are professionals from the CIA, the State Department, and the Defense Department, occasionally from the FBI, usually not. But they're there, just for the sake of continuity, for the sake of continuing policy. And they're out now. Out.
I mean, so this is not really related to the Signal or Gmail leak, right? Yeah. I mean, it's really bizarre, right? I mean, because it's like, it's so adjacent to that if you're, you might, I initially thought, oh, this must be related.
Right. I did too in the beginning. And it turns out it's not.
So,
she just decided
Waltz, who's become as a bag of hammers.
Yeah.
He keeps his job. But these pros who've done nothing wrong and probably were good at their jobs, they're out.
Yes.
Is that basically it?
That is it. And a federal judge yesterday overturned the firing of the 19 CIA officers who had been involved in one way or another with DEI policies at the agency. You know, when they were fired, I remember thinking, well, the CIA is different than every other governmental entity in that you serve at the pleasure of the president. And if the president doesn't like you, or doesn't like your face, or doesn't like that you have a mustache, he can fire you and you're out.
Right.
That rarely happens. It happened once when Jimmy Carter was president. He made a trip to one of our Middle Eastern stations, and the station chief at dinner introduced him to his girlfriend. And he said, "Oh, are you visiting?" And the girlfriend said, "No, Mr. President, I live here." "You live here with him?" "Yes." "You're living in sin?" "Well,
oh wow,
you're fired." And Carter fired the station chief. But wow, that's how rare it is. And it hasn't happened since 1977. Well, this federal judge said, wait a minute. You can't just fire these people and then escort them to their cars. You can end DEI if you want, but these people have to then, have the benefit of CIA's internal rules that you then have 6 weeks to walk the halls and find another job. If you can't find another job after 6 weeks, then you're fired. You can't be extra harsh on them just because.
Well, and that's basically that's what we've seen all throughout government, with USAID, with Doge, which I guess is wrapping up by the end of next month. But right. I mean, that's one of the big trade-offs, right? Like when you're a young person and you're deciding, should I stay in private industry or should I go work for government? One of the advantages of going to work for the government, which might pay less and might not be as exciting, or you might not be able to advance as quickly as in private business, is that it's secure. You're protected. You have a contract. You might have a union. You can't just, it's pretty safe. Unless you fuck up, you're not going to be fired. And this upends all this. I mean, are we just going to see pretty much, if you got laid off or fired under Doge, if you just chill and you hire a lawyer, you're going to get back pay with interest, and a judge is going to rule in your favor, and you're going to be back at work sooner. Later rather than sooner, but you'll be back.
These guys pretend we don't have a Civil Service Act, and that they can just go in and just whack people, and you can't do that. I mean, this was all debated 100 years ago. This is why we have this.
People always say you can't do something because it's illegal. Well, you could totally do something even though it's illegal. But if the person defends themselves and accesses the courts, then eventually you'll be held accountable.
Yes. Yeah.
Presumably. I mean, that's clearly going to happen here.
There's no accountability for Laura Loomer, and how this woman earns a living, I have no idea. I mean, does she do commentary? Does she appear on? She's not on Fox. I don't have any idea. I don't know how she makes a living and why she is so doggone influential.
Not hideous woman.
She's quite good looking.
Yeah. Is that why Trump keeps her around, do you think?
Yes. I think that's exactly what it is. He surrounds himself with
she's easy on the eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. That's I'm a guy, I understand thinking with the little man downstairs, but by the time you're 78 years old, you should have outgrown that.
I'll tell you.
It's really crazy. So what does this mean? So the head of the NSA isn't as powerful as he used to be, right? Because the DNI has oversees all of that. Do you want to?
That's right. Yeah. So the head of NSA actually has two bosses. Technically, at least let me rephrase that. On budgetary issues, the head of NSA is going to fall under the ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. But
it was created fairly recently.
Yeah, 2006, 2005.
That was a Bush thing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it was because George Tenet had so screwed things up that they needed adult supervision over the.
Also part of just the idea, like we need, the lack of coordination between agencies, supposedly before 9/11. I don't know how true that was, but that was.
Oh yeah, it was true.
Okay.
It was true. So in terms of getting their budget approved, they work for ODNI, but they are a DoD agency. They're a component of the Defense Department. And so they fall under the Secretary of Defense. It's a little bit funny, though, because the director of NSA is appointed by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, because the law says, and NSA's charter says, that the head of NSA must be a uniformed military officer.
Right.
So traditionally, they've been 3 stars. There have been a handful of 4 stars that have been there, but it's mostly a 3-star. And then you get promoted coming out of that job. You end up becoming a service chief, or you can become CIA director or national security advisor, and you get your 4th star. But now it's just like, it's every man for himself, and who would want to work there?
So to try to assess how important or how groundbreaking this move is, John, if you could sort of, I mean, how centralized is the leadership of NSA? I mean, is this one of those things, one of those agencies that it's just, people just keep doing their thing. They do their signals intelligence and whatever, and like they're not the puzzle palace, they call it.
Yes,
they're just doing their thing, and like what happens upstairs isn't that important, or is there really going to be a leadership vacuum until this dude and his deputy are replaced?
I think it's going to be a little bit of a combination of the two. In normal circumstances, nobody pays any attention to who the director is. It doesn't matter who the director is. You're going to sit there with your headphones on, listening to some Chinese general, talk to his wife and transcribing it on your computer. So they don't care who the head is. And the same is at the CIA. The CIA, I think I've told you this before. When I first started at the CIA, I was there almost 3 years. And it was election day, 1992. And my boss said in our morning meeting, I know we're not supposed to do this, but I'm just kind of curious who you guys voted for this morning.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And I still remember it was 3 for Clinton, 3 for Bush, and 2 for Perot.
Huh.
And I remember thinking, wow, I'm not the only liberal here. I was shocked.
That's great.
Yeah. But it was so apolitical that I never had any idea if the guy sitting next to me, in some cases for 5 years, was a Democrat, a Republican, or didn't give a shit.
That's excellent.
Yeah. There was a woman, when I was working in Near Eastern and South Asian analysis, there was a woman who got in trouble. She was written up because she discreetly put up a Dole bumper sticker in her cubicle. And they made her take it down, and they wrote her up. HR did. It's like, we are not political.
Are those days over at agencies like CIA and NSA? I mean, do you think if you put up like your MAGA hat, in your cubicle, that would be okay? But if you had like your, Bernie sticker, it might not be okay.
I think that's probably the case today. Yeah.
That's really unfortunate. And
yeah, very much so.
Yeah. I used to work in banking, and I was always surprised by some of the people who would turn out to be secret lefties.
Right.
My boss, the morning after a parliamentary election in Japan, it was a Japanese company, the Industrial Bank of Japan Trust Company. He said, he came in. I said, "Oh, so what do you think of the election results?" The Liberal Party, the progressives had picked up a few seats, and I thought he'd be disappointed because he was such a capitalist, big earner, hardworking guy. And he's like, fuck those people. He goes, I vote straight communist every election. And I was like, really? Yeah. And he was like, he goes, when you work in banking, why capitalism sucks. And I was like, it's a fair point.
When I voted in the Greek election in 2019, it's such an odd way that you vote there. I voted in my grandfather's middle school, right? So I went all the way to the island of Rhodes. Wow. It's a 10-hour flight from New York to Athens. Then it's another hour. You have to really want to vote. Oh yeah, I really wanted to vote. So they give you an envelope that's full of little like 4x6 sheets of paper, like this thick. And what it is the name of the political party and the logo of the political party. Mm-hmm. And so you take the one that you want to vote for. You put it in, you go into the booth, right? And then you take the one that you want. Mm-hmm. You come out of the booth, you throw away all the other 35, and then you stick the one in the ballot box. It's very strange.
I mean, you can easily see how this could be rife for fraud, right?
What shocked me was there were 6 different communist parties.
Yes.
6 in Greece. Now, there's only one that's represented in parliament because you have to get 3% to get a seat in parliament. And that's the old school KKE, the Communist Party of Greece. It's an old Stalinist party. But then there's a Trotskyite party, there's a Maoist party, there's the Euro Communist Party, there's a Cuban Communist Party, there's some malcontent communist who broke off from the Stalinists and he made a party. It's crazy.
That's what the left does. I mean, as you know, I'm a French citizen too.
Yeah.
And so I vote, the French, it's not like that. You vote online. Online. Yeah. Like, I mean, you could move money through your phone. So you can vote on your phone. So you vote online. What happens? It's all like basically 2-factor authentication based is how they do it. So every step you get a key, they reconfirm that you're on your phone and you re-put in another code. But it's really efficient. You sit at home. Awesome. And vote. Anyway, the point is I'm what they call immatriculated here in New York, which means I'm registered with the New York consulate. And every election, I get a big package like you described. And it has each page of, there are these full 8.5 by 11 slippery paper propaganda sheets for each political party and their candidates. It sort of says, it has their logo, it has their pictures, what they claim, what their promises are. And there's, like you described, there's like 30 or 35 parties always. And the French are always changing parties. Like every election, it's always like something new, called something new. But like you said, there's half a dozen communist parties with hammers and sickles. And it's kind of like, really warms my heart.
Yeah, I was kind of taken by it. There were 2 different Nazi parties, which surprised me.
Greece.
Greece. And then there was an ultra-Orthodox party that wants to make it a theocracy, that wants to make the country a theocracy. I got a kick out of that.
There used to be a theocratic party here in the U.S. in the 70s and 80s. The Theocratic Party, like a very minor, like tiny little party. Yeah.
Oh, I missed that.
I collect political ephemera, and I have a few theocracy party pins.
Wow. Yeah, fun.
Don't collect knives or absinthe spoons.
I told you I collect Lincoln stuff, but no.
What's your best Lincoln thing?
I have 3 of his hairs.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's all about the provenance.
You can clone him.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I also have a 1-inch by 1-inch blood-soaked square of the pillowcase that he died on.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I bought it at Sotheby's.
Oh, okay. So it's fairly authenticated.
Oh yeah. It's all about the provenance. The doctor who dug his finger into Lincoln's skull to fish the bullet out, he took the pillowcase as a souvenir.
Mm-hmm. They used to do that back then,
yeah. And he cut it up into pieces and he gave the pieces away to friends. Mm-hmm. So he gave one of those pieces to the governor of Indiana, and he gave it to his daughter, and then it went down through her family and then to Sotheby's, and I bought it. I have a piece of wood from the gallows that the conspirators were hanged on.
Wow.
And I've got a piece of Mrs. Lincoln's black dress that she wore to the funeral.
I saw on sale, I don't know if this was true, but it did seem to be legit, a ticket to the play.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow, that must have been
next time I see something, I'll let you know.
Yeah,
it was very expensive.
Would be interested. I have a ballot. I have an Ohio ballot from the 1864 election, where he and Johnson are on. And what else? I have I have an 11-inch strip of wallpaper from the room that he died in.
Oh, wow! These are like the piece of the sliver from the true cross, right?
Yeah, right.
You're into relics.
I am. I'm very much into relics, and they're out there. There's an auction house called Heritage Auctions in Dallas.
Oh, yeah, I know it.
They're big. They're the third biggest auction house in America, and they have a specialty Lincoln auction every 2 years, and they get like deep. The only thing I was outbid on that I really
Lincoln campaign coin. They were tokens.
Yeah. Those are highly sought after.
Or pharaoh types.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Yeah,
they're really cool.
Yeah,
they're hard to come by because they're a lot of them were vandalized. Some people hated Lincoln and they scratched out his picture. So you get a lot of them where the picture is scratched out, but like Andrew Johnson, he's fine. Biggest asshole maybe ever.
Biggest. So he was so drunk at the inauguration that he couldn't fully say the oath.
And like the way I like to say it is, he fell one vote short of impeachment because by the standards of 1868, like he was considered a racist son of a bitch.
Can you imagine?
By those standards, like a bunch of old white rich guys said this guy takes racism too far.
Just crazy.
So yeah,
just crazy, man.
Well, all right. I think we're probably deprogrammed, as Michelle would say.
That was a fun conversation. Totally. Thanks everybody for joining us too.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks everyone. We'll be back next week. Have a great weekend, and bye, John. See you later.
Bye-bye.